Hosted by Dr. Alex G. on behalf of Serve Wisconsin AmeriCorps, Transform Your Leadership invites you as an AmeriCorps member to engage your own journey and transformation as you become leaders who enrich lives and communities. Now here's Dr. G.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dr. Alex G., and I'm the host of the Black Like Me podcast. I've been involved in community and nonprofit leadership for over 30 years now in my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. My graduate work was in transformational leadership, so I'm passionate about seeing community change and transformation through the development of leaders. Most of you met me or saw me at the kickoff event for AmeriCorps Serve Wisconsin in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the zoo. In light of all that I do, I'm really thrilled to be able to host this Transform Your Leadership project.
First, let me say that I'm really honored to be able to provide this podcast for AmeriCorps members. I've been battling with some type of head cold. I know that I sound a little nasally, but I really wanted to record this episode today. So stay with me, and hopefully my voice isn't distracting, but I feel really good about being here today. And I love the fact that I've been honored enough to be asked to work with you together in this way. I want to say that I commend you for your decision to work for the greater good, that you want to be part of the greater good. There's a perception among many older folks, I'm mid-50s, and many of my colleagues, that people our children's age are just out for pleasures and staring into their smartphones. But I'm noticing by listening to my daughter and her discussions with her friends that many folks who are part of your generation are troubled by what's happening in our world, and you want to be part of the change. Everything from voting rights to climate control and to educational access and the wealth gap and you name it, these issues are pressing us. It just warms my heart that there are a group of folks that want to be a part of the greater good. So I just want to acknowledge that. I also want to commend you on choosing to do this work with AmeriCorps, because I remember when I was in school, so many people wanted to go into business school. They wanted to go into, it's called IT now, but back in the day it was called comp sci, it was computer science, because people wanted to get paid and make a nice living and earn lots of money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there was such a focus on how we participated in the American dream that we didn't think much about those who were excluded from it or somehow disenfranchised from it. And so I want you to realize that I know that you've gone through a process. AmeriCorps didn't just hire you because you look good and because you know how to fill out an application. Something about your answers, something about your temperament, something about your desires struck a chord with them. And they looked at you and said, this is the person who can help us bring about change. This is the person who can help us empower communities. And this is a person who can model the kind of change that we really want to see and be a part of. And because our world is filled with so many critical needs, we only get better when people like you, conscientious folks like you, decide to make a difference and show up and to be part of that difference. And so before I start with the lesson, I just want you to say, I think that it is commendable, and I really laud you for this decision. I love talking about the subject of leadership because it's complex, but it's important. It's often misunderstood. It's different than management, where we're holding systems together. And leadership is really about influencing people, motivating people, inspiring people to make change. Leadership is really about influence in the simplest terms, and management is really about how we hold systems that support leaders and supports the organizations that they operate or participate in. And there are many types of leadership. I won't bore you by listing and doing a compare and contrast of them, but I will talk about an element of leadership that's worked well for me, for the 3 organizations that I'm a part of, and for people who I think have had a great impact on society or on our community, and that is transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is really about how a leader works with a team of people to identify a needed change. And then they create a vision and they guide change through inspiring people to be a part of that. Not just forcibly, but because they really want to be a part of that change. And in executing the change, they themselves become transformed. They become stronger people, more enlightened people, more inclusive people, more intelligent people. And so it's a process where there's a goal that's set. People are inspired, but through their inspired participation, they are transformed. And so that's what I love about transformational leadership. It's different than transactional leadership, where you may want someone to do something for the benefit of a bonus. Now, nothing's wrong with that, and bonuses have motivated a lot of people to do a lot of things. But getting a bonus at the end does not necessarily mean that you were transformed in that process or became a better person. You just got more money. And so I think that leadership can be more than the carrot and stick that gets a person to move like a horse or a donkey from point A to point B. I think that we can value the people in that process differently in order to have a more sustained outcome and a strengthened group of people who are involved in that process. I want to start by telling you a story. I had a group of funders from the East Coast who are interested in the work that we're doing. I have a nonprofit that I've been running for almost 30 years, and we do a lot of capacity development work in African Americans. And so some of the principals of this company wanted to come and see where their investment was going and to see if we were a place where they wanted to continue supporting. And so they showed up, and we were having dinner, and they met my staff. And at the evening, everyone was sort of going their way. People were leaving and, thanking us for inviting them to this gathering to meet these funders. And the CEO of the company said, "Alex, I didn't know," and he named these two gentlemen. I won't say their names. He said, "I didn't know that they were not full-time on your staff." And I said, "That's interesting." He said, "Yes, in fact, they were so thorough in explaining their areas of ministry, the vision of your organization, their involvement, the desired outcomes, that I was floored when they told me that they worked in corporate America or as a teacher." And I said, "Oh, sure. In our context, many times we have bivocational people who have leadership roles, but they have outside full-time jobs." And he said, "I've never heard of people who were not paid to be in a role full-time describe their role and the organization with such thoroughness. I'm going to have to rethink leadership." Now, that was a great compliment to me and to my team, and we did get the grant. And so that was really important. That was very good as well. But what this gentleman was really putting his finger upon was that he talked to people who were so inspired to do the work that they were doing that as a funder, he found himself also being inspired. And he didn't know that people who weren't compensated for doing a particular task could not do so with such professionalism and dedication. And so I use that just to give us an example of what we mean by transformational leadership or transformational leadership theory, that in order to really create these great outcomes, folks have to be treated like they are the valued assets that they are, and not just tools that are being used for the outcome, but they are actually part of the outcome because they become better as well. Transformational leadership is not transactional, because transactional leadership is about leveraging people or their talents to complete a certain task. And again, many things are done this way. That's a valid leadership style. However, transformational leadership is committed to the task of creating positive outcomes or changes in the people who have been selected to bring about a major change in a scenario, a situation, or a community. In fact, if I may say, the lack of this approach to service and leadership is what has hindered human services. I think it's what's rendered human services in some instances benign and ineffective, because the thought is we will fix an individual, we will fix a scenario, and then we will move on to the next individual or scenario that needs fixing, without giving thought to the value that that person could bring to the situation if they were invited in or if they were asked to be part of the process. And so at the end of whatever the project is, the individual becomes transformed. And so is the issue that they're addressing. That if the two of them are not transformed, you have not gotten the full benefit from it. And so a team accomplishing a task should be able to do it, but people should feel good about the skills that they learned, the people that they met, the opportunities that they were given, and the new perspectives that they have when they finish. In fact, I believe that to the extent that an individual is transformed throughout their leadership process, that individual increases their likelihood of a more successful outcome. And so transformational leadership theory holds to the fact that if you want something done, if something needs to be done for the good of society, don't just invest in bricks and mortar. Don't just invest in soil and seed. Don't just invest in pipes and draping and school supplies and laptops. Invest in the individual, because as they are inspired, they are not only a tool for completing the task, but they can help take it in a whole new direction that gives you better outcomes than what you've even imagined. Thus the leader creates or should create a culture where service is valued, servant leadership is valued, professional development is valued, and personal growth is valued. Now, this takes time, it takes energy, and I think that this is why it's easier to just say, do the task because I told you to do it, without really taking a look at how do we equip people to really make this meaningful and long-lasting. I want to give you a few things to consider to give you further understanding or examples of what some of the components of transformational leadership could look like. And so I consider myself as a person who functions in that area, and I'm still learning. I'm still really working to really juggle all the components of it really, really well, because I believe that the benefits are so worth it. And so it begins with a transformational leader asking what can be. You are hired because there's an issue that needs to be addressed. And remember, you were not hired to fix it, because you may not have the wherewithal to fix it all. But many people who are in need of services have an idea of what has alienated them from the services, or what keeps them from wanting to take advantage of the services, or to maybe even believe that the services are available to them. So I want to ask you, as newer leaders, younger leaders, don't kill yourselves by trying to fix everything. You're not going to win because you put in 20 hours a day to fix every issue, to solve every problem, to get everyone, every service, every resource that they need. But you will win, and so will the community, and so will the agency, and so will the people that you're working with, that you're serving, if you begin to think about a couple of these things. So let me give you some examples. What can be? A transformational leader can't just look at what's always been done, because leadership is not about maintaining systems. Now, systems exist for a reason. So I want to make sure that we do not have a negative connotation about people who manage systems. Because systems are managed, you will get a stipend or a paycheck. Because systems are managed, you will get an assignment. And so because of systems and management, you know when your flight takes off and what gate it's in. And so we need all of that. But transformational leaders will take a look at what can be. And so that means you look at the problem, but you don't look at it for its face value. You don't just say, well, this is a problem, let's get through it. You have to ask, well, why is this a problem? And how did it become a problem? And who watched this become a problem? And why didn't this bother anyone else? And what resources were or weren't marshaled for the addressing of this issue? And so the transformational leader needs to take time to think about, what can this community, what can this center, what can this housing complex, what can these seniors, what can these patients do and become? So you have to begin to really think about that. Then what you have to do is really model. Point 2 is model hard work, enthusiasm, and commitment. That leadership is not about what you tell others to do, but it's also about what you do and who you become. And so what it means is people will learn from your hard work. People will learn from the fact that you're diligent, that you're committed, and that you're conscientious. And so really be a part of that change that you want to see. And so as you're identifying a task or what something can be, and you're beginning to work towards it, work in a way, show up in a way, have an attitude that really makes people feel good about the process, and that you model that hard work can be arduous, but it doesn't have to be painful. And that you can do something that's very difficult, but have it uplift your spirit. And so that's really, really important. And so particularly because many of you are working and will be working in distressed areas, the people that you're serving need to see that this is not grunt work for you and that it is not beneath you. But those who are working on your team need to see this as well. So what you model is very important. So one, what can happen, envision it. Two, you have to model what commitment, hard work, and teamwork looks like. Three, look around you and to see who desires to be part of the task at hand. There are people who want to help. They may not always have the best skills, but they show up because they want to be a part of the solution. I will take people who are willing and committed over people who are talented and not committed, because people can feel that their talents are a gift, so they can give 10% and we should be happy. But others who know that they don't have all the talent that's required will often ask for help. They'll show up, they'll come to office hours, they'll come to my office, and they'll say, I really want to be a part of this process. What can I do to be better at it? Can you mentor me or can you coach me? Look around to see who wants to be a part of the task at hand, because that's who and what you have to work with. But the fourth point is, how can you look at those around you and inspire them? How can you help them to realize, you know what, your life experiences, you know what, your commitment, your smile, your ability to stick to things, your ability to organize things, to clean up things, to say thank you and no thank you, to capture notes, to make sure that we've got food for meetings is really important. This changes things. It makes people feel more welcome. I always need you to be a part of this when we're doing it. In fact, when I'm not here, I need you to be a part of doing it. Inspiring others to see their contributions, their value, and what they have to offer is so important, because we often assume that people see in themselves what we see in them, and they don't. And you know what? I don't. That's why I believe that community is so important for the development of individuals, because things that I thought I was really good at, I wasn't. And things that I thought I sucked at, I didn't. And so things, that caused me to sort of, let my ego rise, I had trusted people who said, well, actually, you hinder the process when you get involved that way. Once you cast a vision, hey, why don't you let us do X, Y, and Z? But there are other things that I thought were really difficult for me. I didn't like my writing and my writing skills, but it turns out I'm a good writer. I have 2 books that are published, articles, papers. I'm actually working on a few other books. I write poems and essays, and public speaking. Public speaking used to horrify me, but people who knew me circled around me and said, no, you have a talent in this area. This is what happens when you speak and when you share. You shouldn't put those skills to the side. But I needed inspiration, because I thought, well, are they just saying this to be nice to me, or because they need someone to do something and no one else is around to do it? So they're going to just try to really pump me up and say, come on, Alex, do this, because no one else wants to. You know what I found out? That once they helped to identify those gifts and they inspired me to use them, I started to believe that I could contribute in that way. And then the 5th piece is, how do you encourage people and reward innovation? Because what I realize is the strength of any organizations that I'm a part of is that people think differently than I do. And so if as a leader, you only tell people to do what you see, you're really limiting the resource of that individual. Because a leader, a transformational leader, ought to be able to cast a vision, an umbrella, so to speak, that will make others say, that's motivating. How do I bring my ability as an organizer, as an artist, as a singer, as a fundraiser, as an accountant, as a person who provides comfort or a wise counsel? How do my skills operate under that construct? That's the greatest opportunity, and I think the greatest task of a leader. How do you cast a vision that's big enough and lofty enough to make people say, that's different. We've never thought about that before. But then secondly, really prompt them to ask, what if I could be a part of that? And what if what I know how to do could help? What if the way I serve food, or the way I draw, or the way I organize, or the way I capture photos, or the way I put together videos, or the way I talk about leadership, what if what I have and what I bring to the table is important, And what if someone gave me room and space to do that? And what if they rewarded me for doing that? And so that's something that we've really got to think about. We got to think about what can be, what are the possibilities? How do I model that by the way I go about my work? 3, who around me, who in the community, in the organization, in the office can be part of this task at hand? 4, how do I inspire these individuals to really rise to the task? And 5, how do you encourage and reward innovation? And let me break number 5 up. 1, in encouraging innovation, it means you have to ask people, now, this is what I see and what I think. Is there a better way to do this? Is there a different way to do this? Can you help me talk through this? What have we not considered? I'll give you an example. There's a gentleman who works on my team, and he was formerly incarcerated for a couple of years. He got out of prison, became a part of programming that my organization established, met a wonderful woman. They got married, they have a family, he has a career, and now he's known all over our community for the great work that he does with men and women coming out of prison. But he gave me a suggestion of how to make one of our temporary housing units make more money. And he made some suggestions. He said, let's fix up these rooms, and folks who have the wherewithal to get their own apartments, let's help them do that. But let's negotiate a contract with the Department of Corrections for more beds, because that will yield more money than the affordable rent that we've set up with others. So he put this whole structure together, and I said, okay. And I kind of had this joke. I said, but it's got to be a holy hustle. Like, I'm not going to prison. And so this has got to be all above board. Well, he structured this deal and helped to pitch it to the state. They gave us a new contract. It generated money so that I could hire this man to work full time for me. But it was his ingenuity. Now, I consider myself a pretty creative thinker. I've got the advanced degrees. I've got the books to my credit, the letters behind my name. I've lectured and given workshops on several continents. I've done leadership things in South Africa and India and Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he felt the space to be innovative. He just said, if you just trust me, let me just try to propose something. The role of a transformational leader is to never, ever shut down creativity. Now, you have to be wise and let people have their say. But for the most part, if they're already in your circles, they're not going to say things like, let's swap the Pacific Ocean for the Atlantic Ocean. Let's use buckets and let's just flip the oceans. Certain things you just have to say, you know what, that's kind of nice in another world. Right now, we've got a real problem to solve. And so you have to entertain innovation within reason. But again, I'm trusting that as a transformational leader, you've got reasonable people around you. Now, what if I didn't listen to this gentleman? What if I thought, well, no, the State Department of Corrections wouldn't want to do that. I don't know if I want that responsibility. The people that are staying there paying affordable rent, and maybe they don't want to go someplace else. I could have come up with all of the reasons to not make it work. But the growth of my organization, the growth of our fundraising comes when people think differently. As a transformational leader, you should not be threatened by people who think differently, because you want those innovative ideas, innovation about systems, innovations about personnel, innovation about recruitment, innovation about new strategies for programming. Don't be afraid of it. As a leader, your job is not to have the best ideas. It is to find and nurture and develop the best ideas. So, number 5 has 2 points. Not only do you encourage innovation, but how do you reward it? Some people want bonuses. Some want a flex schedule. Hey, if I meet this goal, can I take a Friday off so that I can have a long weekend? Others don't want a long weekend. They want recognition. They want an employee of the month parking stall, or a photo on the bulletin board in the break room, or they want their names in the newsletter, or they want to be mentioned in a board meeting, all of which is fine. But as a transformational leader, don't confuse the people and their needs. Get to know them. Listen. Don't forget you're inspiring them, so you're getting to know them and they're getting to know you. The people who like recognition, you know them. Give it. The people who want flexibility of schedule, get it. People who are motivated buy a $10 gift card to a coffee shop. Do it. But your responsibility as a transformational leader is to really encourage and to motivate these folks. So let me just say this again. The transformational leader thinks of vision. It doesn't mean that you control it or you own it or it can't get bigger or wider. But part of your role is to think about what can be, and then you work towards those things. Your work needs to motivate people. 3, those who are around you are often able to be part of the task if you identify them, spend time with them and get to know their abilities. 4, you inspire them to do what they don't believe that they can do. And then 5, you encourage innovation and you reward it. This means you got to pay close attention to the task at hand, but an equal amount of attention to the people who are around you. I think that these 5 points will really, really help you to think about the task that you've been given through your agency or organization to really bring about a change. But it does require that you get to know those who are working, among you, because leadership has been given a bad name, that it's measured in the number of followers that you have, but it's rarely measured in the number of people you develop to be leaders also. Whether or not those leaders are able to replace you, they may be leaders in other functions, in other places with different strengths. But who are you developing to become better? When I was growing up, leadership basically said, because I said so. But transformational leadership says, hey, this is what you get to do and what you get to be a part of. And I feel that piece is really, really important.
Allow me to give you an example. My organization is working on a redevelopment project near my offices. And it started off as a soccer field. And I asked one of the young men who has grown up in our programs, what do you think about this idea of having an outdoor soccer field? And he said, that's great. It'll draw some kids in, but there are a lot of kids who really are into basketball. And so is there a way that you can make the field half soccer, half basketball? That way you can appeal to a broader group of kids. I started thinking about that. And then another suggestion came up, well, can it be enclosed? Because if it's just outdoors, you're limited by weather. When it's cold, I live in Wisconsin, you won't be able to do anything on it. That idea and concept has morphed into a design for a full-size, like high school gym with a 3-point line. We can play indoor futsal. We still have room. We're designing room for outdoor soccer, but also indoor soccer. I didn't even think that broadly. I didn't think that large. But a teenager said, if you want to be able to relate to people like me, you might want to consider doing these 2 or 3 things. Tweak the program, add this. I began to realize that even though I sat with consultants and builders and fundraisers, we weren't asking young people, what would keep you occupied? What would keep you motivated? What would keep you out of mischief? What would really offer you something that you could bring your friends to? And it was a young man who has participated in our programs, who helped to fully reorient me on how I was going to go about this project. Now I'm looking at something that will be historic once we complete it, and something that the state of Wisconsin has never built or experienced. I mean, it'll be a gym, but so many other components to it. Now, here's the part that's really interesting. This young man no longer lives in state, but when I talk to him, I say, you know what, at some point, I'm going to need to fly you back because I need to pick your brain about the programmatic aspects of this facility, because I'm building this because of my conversation with you. And he'll typically say, yeah, I remember that conversation. So for him, the way I encourage innovation is to remind him that he has sparked a new thought in me that's leading to a multi-million-dollar endeavor. With other young people, it's sitting on planning committees. There have been some who I know may be too young to have to get a work permit, and I might pay them a stipend to do some work. So for this young man, I realized that the reward is reminding him that he is part of something that's going to influence our community for decades to come. There are other young people who feel really inspired to serve on ongoing committees. This young man is not a committee person, but there are others who like being the youth representative on a really big project. Others are folks who, when we get certain kinds of grants, we might have to hire them, put them on staff on a stipend, in order to really keep them at the table, but give them a sense of really shaping a project or an endeavor. And so there's no one way to really encourage innovation, but you have to really watch people closely. The people who like recognition, recognize them. The people who like influence, put them in influential positions. Those who may enjoy and also need some financial remuneration, then find a way to get them stipends. But we have to motivate innovation, reward innovation, because then people realize that not only are they part of change, but that their innovation is respected and valued. So when you're working with youth, dare to ask them what can be, what should be, what do you see? And then when they step up to the challenge and when they give you great insight, notice them enough to know how they're wired so that you can reward their innovation. That's a powerful tool.
As I begin to wind down, I want to talk to you about an example of a mission statement I saw while visiting the Department of Corrections one day. As I mentioned, my nonprofit does a lot of work in this area with doing training, pre-release training with men inside prisons, and then work when they come out, and a plethora of services to help them become plugged back into the community. It's called reentry. But I visited a space inside the headquarters of corrections where ergonomically designed furniture and cool clothing is being sold, and it's made by the folks who are incarcerated. And so I walked around and I saw these cool desks and bookshelves and nice clothing. And they said, yes, the folks who are inmates, and I've been taught by folks who are formerly incarcerated that that's a derogatory term. So I'm only saying that because that's what they said. But these are things that they've created. And I was told, don't go out to the regular furniture stores and buy this. This is great quality. And these were like $1,800 desks. And so this is what the mission statement said inside this Bureau of Correctional Enterprises. The mission statement says, the mission of the Bureau of Correctional Enterprise is to enhance public safety by providing jobs and training for inmates which develop marketable skills and experiences in financially viable businesses, producing quality products and services to our customers. Let me just read that again. The mission of the Bureau of Correctional Enterprises is to enhance public safety by providing jobs and training for inmates which develop marketable skills and experiences in financially viable businesses, producing quality products and services to our customers. And so what they're saying is they create public safety because they teach folks who they call inmates workable skills that can be transferred when they move outside. But what they don't mention is that these men and women make up to $1 an hour. $1 an hour. Now, this is a mission statement. They've got a huge industry. It's making money. But do you think the workers were asked what they thought about this industry? If it's what they wanted to do? If they felt that they were part of something good? Did they really believe while building furniture that they were being given job training and experience that would help them live better on the outside? Or is this sort of a vision that's just imposed on people? I'm going to be careful. I don't want to get on my soapbox about prison reform, but this is what I want to say. This is an example of someone in leadership saying, this is a good idea. And we can push it because we're saying public safety. That's a good buzzword. And what that means is we will teach people how to be productive by letting them work for 50, 60, 70, 90 cents an hour. And we will give them skills so that they can go out and do that when they get out of prison. Now, I don't even have enough time to explain all the barriers for employment for people who've been imprisoned. But what I want to say is the folks who work for this industry did not buy into this mission. They are merely workers. Their rights are being taken. And these are things that they're doing. I won't say that they're forced because some of them can put money on their books by doing this. But my point is this industry benefits the industry, but it does not benefit the individuals. They were not given workable skills. They were not given transferable skills. They did not feel honored in the process. And I know a lot of men and women coming out of prison, and very few are carpenters, masons, furniture designers and clothing designers. And so I don't know how corrections thought that this would really help them with livable skills that could earn livable wages. But again, I digress. Again, this is a point of where people are not motivated and they feel used by the system. You're going to be working with people and they will either feel used because they are part of your enterprise or something that you're trying to create, or they will feel very empowered that you looked into their eyes, you got to know their story, you gave some thought to where they fit into the solution. They will relish the fact that you have the audacity to think that they have the wherewithal to be a partner with you in creating a greater future, a greater organization, a greater community, a greater society. Most people don't get up in the morning thinking, I don't want to be a part of anything meaningful. Most people wake up wanting to be a part of a solution, and they don't know anyone who can envision that, identify them as being a part of that, inspire them to be a part of that, ask what they really think and what they would really do in the situation, and then reward them for it. This is really, really important. It's hard work. And for those who practice these skills will see great, great rewards. I started off by talking about this story of two gentlemen who work in my organization who worked full-time on the outside, one in business and one in education. And I talked to you about the funder who was so impressed with their commitment. Rather than just assigning those men tasks or using them to plug holes, I talked with them and asked, what's your passion? What's your background? What are your skills? What are your untapped skills that you'd love to bring into this work? What are things that we assume you like to do because you're a business person, you're an educator, that you don't necessarily want to do here? Because once you find out who people are and what makes them tick, and if you take the time to both identify that, understand it, celebrate it, and then give them opportunities to use it, to employ it, to work in that area, you make the organization you serve and the people with whom you serve stronger and more vital. And I think that that's the opportunity that we have, that if you're going to be the greater good, and you will be the greater good, you don't have to fix people. You don't have to do things single-handedly, but you will need to reflect. You will need to understand the situation and the opportunities. You'll need to become a learner. You'll need to check your ego. But if you understand the very people who may be called clients or customers or patients could potentially be the folks who help your agenda, your plan, your vision happen, you will think about them differently and you'll treat them differently. This is the task of a leader, to not just get to the finish line, but get to the finish line with those with whom you've been entrusted, and they feel that they are as much a part of the success as you. Years ago, the late Reggie White played for the Green Bay Packers, and he gave a talk to a group of leaders in Madison. And at the end of his talk, he said, when we won the Super Bowl, he said, of course, we as the players got Super Bowl rings. He says, but do you know that the people who take care of the turf and the field got rings, and the people who sweep up popcorn boxes in the stands got rings, and the person who takes your ticket at the gate got a ring, and the people who tear your tickets and scan them when you walk in got rings? He said, because we did not do it alone. And to win a Super Bowl, a world championship, and not honor the people who help people park cars, eat popcorn, clean up behind us, sweep the bathrooms, take care of the fields, paint the lines, to ignore those people is to really demean and lowball our win. And so when we won, we won. I love that. That's how you take pride in making popcorn, cleaning bathrooms, sweeping up garbage, taking tickets, because you realize that you're part of something that not just you, but they are part of something big. And when you win, and you will, everyone must be celebrated.
Well, I want to thank you for listening to this first episode of the Transform Your Leadership podcast. In the next episode, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive in looking into your own narratives or your own stories as a part of transforming your leadership.